Welcome to episode number 260, where I'm speaking with Vaidya Kamya Pillai about PCOS or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. We talk about the symptoms of PCOS and the doshas involved, along with the samprapti or the progression of the syndrome. Of course, we talk about the Ayurvedic treatment and how you can prevent imbalances like PCOS with diet and lifestyle. So please stay tuned. Welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm your host, Colette, and I hope to educate and empower you to take charge of your health and well-being, preventing disease in the body and mind so that you can thrive in life. I will be sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, which is the ancient healing tradition from India. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend listening to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. And if you like the content, please be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so the new episodes will automatically download for you. Also, you may want to check out my private Elements community, which is away from social media. It's a safe space for like-minded people to come together, to connect, to share, to support each other, and to continue the conversation from the podcast episodes. Check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just click on the community tab. And I hope to connect with you there. Thanks for listening. And now here's a new episode. This episode is sponsored by Kerala Ayurveda. If you're an Ayurvedic professional and want to improve your skills supporting clients in their journeys, check out Kerala Academy's continuing ed programs. Topics include case discussions, formulation making, assessment and pulse diagnosis, Vedic formulations, and more. Study in person and via live streaming. Students from all schools are welcome. To learn more, visit keralaayurveda.us/courses and use the code ELEMENTS to save 10% on an upcoming program. You'll also find that link in the show notes. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Vaidya Kamya Pillai, who is a specialist in Ayurveda with more than a decade of clinical experience. She earned her degree in Ayurvedic medicine from Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala. Later, she served as a faculty in the same university before relocating to California. Currently, she works at Kerala Ayurveda Academy and Wellness Center in Milpitas as a Vaidya, core faculty, and mentor. Coming from a family of teachers and healers, it has always been a calling as well as a privilege for her to choose this noble profession and serve the community. Vaidya Kamya believes in helping her clients through creative, practical tools using the principles of Ayurveda and Yoga. Vaidya Kamya, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Colette. Lovely to be here. Excited to have these conversations with you. You know, female health is something that's very close to my heart. So I'm also looking forward to these conversations.
Female health, such an important topic. And unfortunately, in our world today, there's lots of imbalances in the reproductive system for women in general. And the disorder we're going to discuss today is PCOS or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. And it's a really common endocrine disorder. And where I'd love to start, Vaidya Kamya, is what is PCOS, please? And also maybe if you could cover what is an endocrine disorder.
Sure. Yes, Colette. So it's really funny. Sometimes I get asked by students, male students, why don't you talk about male health? Always everybody is talking about female health and so female centric. It's not that the male are less important or nothing like that. It's just that female health problems are much more complex and the management is much more nuanced. I often compare it to, male health problem is like your light bulb not working and you just change it or you change the outlet and it's fixed. But in female health, there are multiple factors involved. And It's like one part of your house is not having a power supply, and you go all the way down and check, unplug all the appliances, find out what is the circuit breaker, put them back. So
Right.
it's much more nuanced.
Much more intricate, absolutely.
That's right. And coming to PCOS, it is also called the Steen-Leventhal syndrome, because it was found in 1930s by Steen and Leventhal. They found a group of women who had infertility, and their presentation was pretty similar, with excessive hair growth, the unwanted hair. We call it hirsutism, weight gain tendency, irregular menses. So they also found that there is this appearance of cysts in their ovaries. So that's how the name came. In my opinion, it's a little confusing name, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. So it's a syndrome. That's a way of the scientific community to tell us that this is, a condition where things are not black and white. There are no definite, symptoms. There are no specific causative factors. It is a heterogeneous, multifactorial condition. Now, let me explain it to you in a way in which I explain it to my clients. So we, female, they are born with a definite number of eggs. We have our stash of eggs when we are born. And we get, there's this monthly cycle, right? Once we hit puberty, every month there is the communication happening between brain and the ovaries. And there is this rhythmic pulsatile secretion of chemical messengers, the growth hormones. Then you might have heard about FSH, LH. So all these help the ovaries to create one dominant mature follicle and release an egg in the mid-cycle. So that is the female cycle. Now, what happens in PCOS is that this communication between brain and the ovaries is not happening, or it is, faulty. So this might have happened to you also. You are so engrossed in reading a book or watching a movie, and you don't hear your mom or dad calling you, right? It happens to me often. And with my son, and then I have to get into my mad mom voice and increase my voice every time. So that's exactly what the brain and the ovaries also do. When communication is not happening, it keeps on increasing the level of these chemical messengers. Abnormally high LH, which makes it impossible for the ovaries to have this one dominant, that biggest follicle which secretes or releases the egg. So ovulation doesn't happen. There will be menstrual irregularities, and that's what happens. So there is this entire dysregulation of the hormonal and the metabolic processes. And then if this process continues, then it has an implication on our metabolic health as well. So there's ovarian confusion, ovulation disruption, overnourishment to some extent, then overproduction of insulin. These are the multiple steps involved in this condition called PCOS. I hope I touched upon the outline of this condition.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great explanation. Thank you so much. And you can really see how there's so many different layers to this. And I'm sure that it can manifest differently in different people as well. So there are certain symptoms that are characterized that you mentioned, maybe lack of menses, irregular periods, excess body weight, multiple, maybe cysts, and also insulin resistance, which you just talked about. So it's not necessarily right that everyone's going to get those symptoms. Is that correct? It may manifest differently in different people.
Absolutely, yes. And this is a condition where there is different type of presentation. You cannot say even the presence of multiple cysts is not necessary, and by itself doesn't mean anything. So if you randomly select a woman who is walking down the street and do an ultrasound scan, you might see multiple cysts in her as well. But if there are no other symptoms, it doesn't mean anything. Right. So it's a combination of multiple factors. And you are very right. It's relatively very common. In fact, it is one of the most common endocrine disorder a leading cause of infertility in women. I think about the number is about 1 in 10 in the US. 1 in 10 women have PCOS.
Wow. 1 in 10, those numbers are very high.
Pretty high, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to diagnose because things are not in black and white.
Right.
Diagnosis is not straightforward. And the same symptoms have a variety of potential causes, like menstrual abnormalities, like delayed menses, could be a sign of some other condition like hypothyroidism. So that's what makes the diagnosis difficult. So about 70%, we say that we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. About 70% women are not diagnosed. And that is also equally frustrating, right? One part, they have the diagnosis and the fear mongering, and you get stressed about the diagnosis. But on the other part, knowing that something is going on in their system and not getting a diagnosis, that is also equally stressful.
And so Ayurveda tells us that there's different types, right? Of course, if we have more of an imbalance or vikruti in Pitta or Kapha or Vata, that we may be showing more of those type of symptoms. Can you touch on that a little bit? How these symptoms manifest according to the different vitiation of the doshas?
Absolutely, yes. So this is where Ayurveda is important, and I'm so mesmerized by this paradigm, right? This ingenious method that through which we look at not just the symptoms. Of course, symptoms are important in Ayurveda, but our management is never based on just the symptoms. And when someone comes to an Ayurvedic Vaidya and they do the assessment and come to the conclusion that certain energies are out of balance, or these channels in their system or these tissues are affected, we never want the backing or the validation of some diagnosis, right? Because if you have a diagnosis, it's always great. So I guess that is the reason why the number of women seeking Ayurvedic help is increasing with respect to polycystic ovarian disease, especially, the female health problems. And interestingly, most of them come for their cosmetic concerns, right? They are not worried about their missed periods, but they are worried about that acne, or they're worried about the excessive unwanted facial hair. So that's when they come to me, and I explore more and get to know what is really happening at the level of their doshas. And so that is what I'm hoping to have, this supportive conversation and spread awareness, catch them young, because most of the time when the clients come to me, they are already on these synthetic hormones for a long time, and sometimes they develop side effects, or sometimes they are not happy with the results. So they have this back and forth. And finally, when nothing is working, that's when they end up coming to Ayurveda. So this is, like I said, the ovulation abnormalities. We can see there is this menstrual disturbance. For some people, delayed cycles. For some, very less flow, right? Like it's called oligomenorrhea. Some, there is excessive bleeding, abnormal bleeding. So all these come under the menstrual disturbance. Then some of the smoke signal for hyperandrogenism is hirsutism, acne, and thinning of hair. So they start losing hair, especially from the top of their head. And there is the weight gain as well. There is the metabolic part, where you have conditions like insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So this is the general presentation. Of course, for the diagnosis, they say that at least 2 of the 3 main characters, which is hyperandrogenism, ovulation abnormalities, and the presence of cysts, right? The enlarged polycystic ovaries in the ultrasound. So these 3 are the main characteristic features, and at least 2 of this needs to be present to be diagnosed as PCOD. So the most common presentation coming to us is, about that menstrual abnormality with excessive facial hair growth. People remove their hair, right? So we have to kind of ask more questions and explore. And in Ayurveda, the explanation given, uh, like I said, we don't often need a diagnosis per se, but there is a disease which is mentioned in Kashyapa Samhita, which is called Pushpakni Jataharni. So Pushpakni, in that disease, it describes about a condition where there are anovulatory cycles and excessive hair growth, and that is usually correlated to PCOS. But my opinion is that we should not just get fixated in correlating these conditions to Ayurvedic, diseases mentioned in Ayurveda. We should always look at it on a case by case scenario.
Absolutely.
If someone is coming to you for abnormality in their cycles, you have to adopt concepts from the menstrual abnormality chapter, which is the Artava Vyabhat or Yoni Roga. Then if someone is approaching for their infertility concerns, then there is the chapter on that called Vantyata. Then the metabolic problems, right? The obesity, insulin resistance. We have the chapters on metabolic disorders, Staulia and Prameha. Of course, the minor issues like acne, baldness, those come, or they also come in the later chapters, like Mukha Doshika, Khalati. So these are fancy Sanskrit terms, I said, but these are chapters in our textbooks, which from where we can adopt the treatment principles and understand kind of what is going on in their system.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree, like taking it on a case by case basis is so important. And you can see when you're listing some of the normal symptoms or some are characterized as the normal symptoms of PCOS, you can see how they may be related to a vitiation in different doshas. So like a scanty period or a lack of period may be associated with more of a vata type of imbalance. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So, most of the common presentation and the common the etiology, the causative factor, if you zoom into it, you can see that there is this excessive consumption of calories, calorie-rich food, right? So more sweet, preference to sweet taste, salty, sour taste, heavy foods, deep fried foods, and overly processed food. And these days there is sedentary lifestyle. Once I moved to the US, I no longer, had this daily walk. Because we take our car to the stores, right? So we don't have to walk anymore. So suddenly this lifestyle change, sedentary lifestyle, daytime sleep is also big because, especially the high schoolers who come to me, they don't sleep at night. Probably they have, all the study groups and everything is going on at night. So they end up sleeping in the daytime. And when I talk to them about the circadian rhythm and ways to fix it, they always ask me, then how can I have a social life if I'm not awake at night? So it has kind of become normal for them to stay up late at night and sleep the next day. And that's why I said, it's important to spread this awareness at maybe school level, the time they hit puberty, menarche. From that time onwards, the importance of having a rhythm, because like you said, it is a problem of vata. And when there is a vata predominant problem, with the core of the problem is rhythm. So fixing the rhythm is one of the best things we can do. And of course, because of the causative factors, you can see there is kapha predominance as well. So it's more of a vata kapha aggravation that happens in this condition. Then there is the always we talk about the stress route and the gut route for a disease, right? The universal samprapti. So in PCOS also we have the stress route where there is stress and anxiety and emotions over sadness, over happiness, excitement, all these leading to dhatu depletion, that leading to vata aggravation. So on one side, Vata getting aggravated because the channels are blocked, and on the other side, Vata aggravating because of a depletion at the tissue level. Right. So both of these contribute to Vata aggravation ultimately. And if you think about the samprapti, or the pathogenesis, that's where we focus rather than the symptoms, right? So most of the time, it is that Vata, the Kapha increasing with the causative factors. We see there is that Kapha increase in the Kapha locations of the body. So we say, the blood and sweat is Pitta predominant, bone tissue is Vata predominant, and the rest of the tissues are Kapha predominant. So that's why I said the paradigm that we have, it's so mesmerizing, so wonderful that we can take any disease in the world, any new disease, and we can create our own samprapti. So in PCOS, when this kapha increases in the kapha locations or the kapha predominant tissues, which is rasa, mamsa, medas, majja, and shukla, we see the effects in those tissues and their byproducts. So the tissues or the dhatus have subtissues and what we call as mala, the tissue level wastes are also created, right? Mm-hmm. In PCOS as well, there is increase of kapha, an abnormal increase of kapha, leading to an abnormal increase of the byproducts of these tissues. So rasa creating abnormal artava, mamsa creating cysts in the body, medas creating metabolic disorders like prameha or obesity, staulia, majja getting kapha aggravation and creating more and more of waste which accumulates on the skin, right? So the skin oiliness is the byproduct of majja dhatu, so that becomes excess. So that is what results in acne, and of course shukra. Many people say shukra doesn't have any waste, but ojas is one of the byproduct of shukra, so that get affected. The secondary sexual characters like hair growth, those get affected, those become abnormal. So how beautiful is that samprapti, the progress mentioned, right?
It is just unbelievable. I'm always, all these years in studying Ayurveda, I'm still astonished by how 5,000 years ago they had this wisdom and that it's still relevant today and we need it more than ever today. And that Ayurveda focuses on the individual rather than, like you said, a certain diagnosis. And sometimes it's great just to focus on the individual because it's like an investigation when you're with a rogi, right? When you're with a client, that you're trying to figure out the root cause of the disease and clear up the symptoms, and of course make sure that it doesn't return, which is why Ayurveda is so amazing in helping with the disease or imbalances in the body. And you talked there and gave a great breakdown of the samprapti, so the progression of the disease in the body. And so essentially what you're saying, like the causative factors are usually like a sedentary lifestyle, like you were talking about, improper food, whether that's at the improper time or more processed food, right? Or maybe excessive food, stress, of course, which is normal in our world today. We can't seem to avoid it. And sleep is a big issue, as you talked about. And so breaking down that samprapti even more. So all these causative factors, and for each person, it may be very different, leads to a disruption, right, in the digestive, the fire, the agni, which then is creating ama, right, the toxins. And then it goes on to, like you said, create these blockages in the body or in the shrotas.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And I love how we can use these terms so that, most of the time when we translate it or use another English term, it doesn't carry the same meaning, right? So yes. Ama, there is no translation for it. So yeah, that plays a huge role, and so does the blockages in the channel.
I'm going to jump in here for a moment because, as you heard Vaidya Kamya just say there, fixing the rhythm of the body is the best thing we can do to prevent these sorts of imbalances like PCOS. And I wanted to let you know that if you're interested in getting your body into a rhythm, getting all your systems on a regular cycle, tuning into these circadian rhythms, then you may be interested in my 28-day online self-paced Daily Habits for Holistic Health program. The objective of this 28-day online course is to educate and support you through the process of implementing daily routines and habits to help you achieve this rhythm of the body, and also to educate you. You'll learn how to structure your day to flow with the daily energy cycles. And this is really important in order to get all the systems of the body in a regular routine. You'll learn about the mental gunas or qualities and how to maintain positive mental health. You'll learn about the foundations of Ayurvedic healing and how to become your own healer, understanding the principle of opposites that you can bring into your daily life and, again, prevent imbalances. And you'll also learn to connect to your true nature, to your intuition, which will help guide you in living a positive and fulfilling life. So if you're interested in checking that Daily Habits for Holistic Health program out, just click on the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the programs tab. Okay, let's go back to my conversation with Vaidya Kamya. And so, how does Ayurveda treat PCOS, which is the big question? Now, I do want to, before we go into this discussion, Vaidya Kamya, I always want to recommend that people, of course, you need to see an Ayurvedic professional to get an individualistic, tailored treatment plan for you. Always recommend that, don't recommend just buying things off the counter, and really get the advice first to make sure that you're not putting yourself on a path to further imbalance. So I just want to make that disclaimer before we talk about it. But if you could talk a little bit about how Ayurveda treats PCOS and the imbalances that are occurring, that would be great.
I couldn't agree with you more, Colette. That's so true. And these days, as Ayurveda is becoming popular, the herbs are also becoming popular. And instead of using the whole herbs, people end up using the extracts, right? So there is curcumin instead of turmeric, or piperine instead of the long pepper. And they think that they are taking Ayurvedic herbs and it's going to be beneficial to them because it's natural. Well, snake venom is also natural. The context is what is more important. So are you using it at the right context? If not, even the best medicine can act like a poison. That is the reason why management is always a teamwork. You need someone with more awareness and more they have the backing of the core principle, and together with them you make some dietary lifestyle changes, and if necessary we bring in our allies, the herbs and the formulations, and that's how the Ayurvedic management is. So like I said previously, the pathogenesis is more important. So we are chasing the progress of the disease. It's called the samprapti, breaking the samprapti, and that is depending on other factors as well. So there's a very specific pathway that the doshas have taken in your system. So we need to chase that out. And then your age matters, the chronicity of the condition matters, your lab values matter. And I know that we cannot, as Ayurvedic practitioners, I cannot suggest to do lab tests, but people always end up having a lot of, they come with a big file of their reports. So that's always helpful. It's not that Ayurvedic Vaidyas do not need those information. That's also, so if you're going to your Vaidya, please take all your reports as well. That will be helpful for them. The scan report, the lab values, all those are helpful. And I talked about the main presentation, or the most common presentation, where there is the typical insulin resistance, weight gain, thinning of hair, excessive hair growth, acne, right? That is about 70% of the cases. But then there is the lesser known, about 30-20% of cases which are lean PCOS, right? So the presentation will be the person very lean with facial hair. And there will be, if you look at the causative factors, there will be that less calorie intake, excessive stress, a ton of stress going on. And these people love to work out. They work out like crazy. So there, the approach is different, even though we might use a few similar herbs, but the dietary modification, the lifestyle modification is all very different than the typical presentation of PCOS. So it is always a case by case scenario. We also work on removing the causative factor. So if there is daytime sleep involved, that needs to be stopped. If there is processed food, too much of processed food, then that needs to be cut down. So removing causative factor, cutting or breaking the samprapti, and mostly if it is a typical presentation, we go for kapha and vata pacification, removing the channel blockage, increasing pitta. Right? This might sound a little crazy, but our the female reproductive the what do we call as ova, right? The gamete, that is having an agnya fire quality to it. So when it is not working well, when that tissue fire is abnormal or slow, we have to slightly increase the tissue level fire. So there is this the ama burning approach, which we call pachana, then correcting the flow of the abnormal vata, reducing the inflammation. That is the typical approach, or the management approach. And of course, most people come when they are on hormonal, the synthetic hormones, right? So weaning from the hormones slowly with the help of their doctor. That is also a part of our treatment, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. One side we are adding these artificial things, and the other side we are trying to balance the doshas. When the lean PCOS comes to us, there is we need to look at the correcting the HPO axis. Mainly, that is where our focus is. So calming down their nervous system. That is where things like a shirodhara or certain specific nasya, those become relevant in the lean category, or the overworked depleted category. There are herbs like kutukola. You might be very familiar with it. Then there's the licorice, ashwagandha. All of these have that balancing action on the endocrine system. Ashwagandha, as you know, is an adaptogen, so it helps to conserve our energy and help the body to conserve and make use of that energy nicely. In case of people who come to us with no menstruation for more than 2 or 3 months, it is very, very important to induce cycles for them. So we have many natural remedies for that. So something like black sesame seeds taken in a certain way has the ability to induce menstruation. So, if you have that sufficient lining created in your uterus, to shed that, taking black sesame seed, what I usually suggest is 1 whole tablespoon of black sesame seed on empty stomach early morning, first in the morning. You take it, you slowly chew it down. You can also have some jaggery that combined with this black sesame seed first thing in the morning for 3 to 5 days will definitely induce menstruation. So it's a natural method to do that. And of course, black cumin helps, fenugreek helps, ginger, garlic, all these, you can include that in your diet. And that will do the job of increasing that tissue level pitta. And if you have insulin resistance or obesity, then we have wonderful herbs. We have to do the pachana anulom, again, going back to ama burning, pacifying the doshas, and then more helpful herbs, specific targeted herbs like guduchi, our hero, neem, tree turmeric is a big game changer, shilajit, trifla. All these are wonderful herbs and combinations. Then if there is menstrual abnormality, aloe vera is really helpful. Ashoka, right? Ashoka means no shoka. Shoka is depression. So you see that these clients also come with depression, anxiety. So in addition to balancing their hormones, it also helps their mind bring balance at that level as well. So it's wonderful the amount of the resources that we have in Ayurveda. We have uterine cleansers like castor and chaste tree. We have herbs that induce ovulation. There is an entire chapter, in fact, in Kashyapa Samhita on dill. Dill is Shatapushpa, wonderful for inducing ovulation. Shatavari, most people are familiar with Shatavari, but Shatapushpa is more, I would say, it is more powerful to induce ovulation and increase that fertility. So there are different ways of taking it depending upon the individual's condition.
Thank you for that rundown. That was great. And I just want to touch on a couple of things you said, because you gave so much information there. It was great. And you talked about in the lean PCOS condition that there's generally a focus and treatment on the HPA axis, which I talked about that recently in an episode on burnout. And it is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And that's why you mentioned like Shirodara. We've talked about this in the podcast before, the treatment where you're getting oil poured across the forehead and it's essentially to calm the nervous system, which the HPA axis is like an intersection of the nervous and endocrine system, right? So the Shirodara is really calming to the nervous system, and Nasya as well. Nasya are the nasal drops. And it's so fantastic to hear the range of herbs and treatments available from Ayurveda. And again, really important, I would never recommend that you just buy herbs off the shelf. Get the advice on your specific condition, because you could be taking herbs thinking they're beneficial for that condition, but according to your vikruti, according to your imbalance, they could imbalance you further and put you in more trouble. So really important to get tailored advice. But there is certainly things that everybody could do in order to prevent the symptoms or syndromes like this happening. And they are, like you mentioned earlier, living in tune with their circadian rhythms, your food, your lifestyle, your diet. So I think let's touch on those, the general things that people can do in regards managing stress, sleep, and like I said, diet and lifestyle, if you want to touch on a few of those. And these are things you can implement. You don't need specific advice on this. These things you can implement to make sure that you keep your doshas in balance and prevent these imbalances which cause these disorders.
Absolutely. And I can go on and on about food and lifestyle. It's one of my favorite area, because that's where we can make the main change. And only if necessary, we bring in the herbs and the formulations, right? My practice involves some formulations as well, the traditional recipes that has been around for thousands of years. But we always focus and start with the food and lifestyle changes. Sometimes it's challenging because, like I said, the high schoolers, for example, right? They're under so much stress and they have so much to finish. And asking them to go to bed early might not always be practical solution for them, right? So we might have to add some herbs, add some spices, add formulations if needed to get the benefits. But it's not going to be the same, right? So in food, for example, I'm sure you might have talked a lot about the food guidelines that Ayurveda says. The general guidelines, that's again relevant in balancing our doshas, preventing ama, and just maintaining our body-mind system healthy. So the warm food, we always promote having warm food. Warm doesn't mean very hot straight from the stove, but it should be fresh and warm when we are eating it. Easy to digest, especially if you have that Agni imbalance or ama that is accumulated in the system, definitely you have to prefer easy to go for easy to digest food, the way you cook it, right? So rather than deep frying it, or rather than adding a lot of oil and cooking it, you can just braise it or bake it or steam it. That makes it easy to digest. Adding spices help in digesting the food. So spices like cumin, coriander, fennel, fenugreek, black pepper, ginger, garlic, all these fresh herbs and spices also help in enhancing our digestion and removing that ama in the subtle way. Adding healthy fats is important. So we have heard this narrative from the 1970s that fats are bad, have more carbs and less fat, and that has changed now. So these directives and food guidelines keep on changing. It's not at all something that we can depend on, right? So rather than that, listen to your body when you're about to eat your food. Be mindful. See if you are extremely dry and depleted, then add more healthy fats to your diet. Have enough healthy fiber in your food, and most importantly, have your food on time. So timely, because at its core, PCOS is a rhythm problem. So eating on time becomes a medicine for people suffering from PCOS. In general, even if you look at the Pathya is a conducive diet and lifestyle for a disease. So if you look at the Pathya of PCOS, you can see low GI carbs like barley mentioned in the Pathya. So most of the non-starchy vegetables, legumes, and fruits are low glycemic index. Then horse gram is mentioned, which is very specifically having that anti-cyst or anti-kapha quality to it. So making a soup with it, or having a one-pot meal with the, throw in some vegetables, throw in a handful of barley to it, and add some fresh herbs. That makes it really easy for people. Avoiding refined carb as much as possible. The processed food, it is not very easy. It is easier said than doing it is a different thing. So whenever possible, as much as possible, avoiding it. Cutting down on the evening calories, that is also equally important. Going for a walk, maybe post lunch or post dinner, that makes a world of difference. And it might sound like a simple suggestion, but it makes a huge impact on the metabolic system. So just going for maybe 1,000 steps after lunch and after dinner, that is really important. Cutting down on stimulants, coffee, alcohol, and the big one of the problematic things is the non-nutritive sweetness. I see when I tell people to cut down on sweet, sugar, sour, excessively sweet things, they end up taking these non-nutritive sweeteners instead of that. So once you have that tendency of insulin resistance and slow metabolism, anything, whatever substitute you add is going to create a similar imbalance. So, cutting down is most important in that case. Loading on vitamins, especially the B vitamins, with the fish, soybean. I'm talking about the whole, soybean and not the processed ones. Soybean oil is actually a very bad ingredient in your food. So whenever you end up getting food from the stores, just read the backside, right? It contains all the ingredients. So look for the oil in which it was made, all the other ingredients. Avoid processed one as much as possible. Cheap oils, there is a chance for creating rancidity and inflammation in the system. Load antioxidant rich food as well, the berries and vitamin C rich food, strawberries, broccoli, the Indian gooseberries, very helpful, or very it's not easily available, so no point in harping about it, but it's a rasayana. So that is, if you can get hold of it, then it's great. Then vitamin D-rich food, egg yolks, right? Milk, mushrooms. Then there is the micronutrients, zinc, magnesium. So loading on all these nutrients. So the first and most important is having warm, unctuous, that is healthy, having healthy fats, easy to digest food, fiber-rich food, and timely food. And of course, I also, suggest in this particular condition something called seed cycling that is also really beneficial for PCOS. So having certain type of seeds during the follicular phase, like the pumpkin seeds, and in the luteal phase, having something like the chia seeds or sesame seeds. That also helps with our cycles and fertility. Coming to lifestyle, I'm sure, Colette, you might have talked about Dincharya, how to start your day, how to carry it forward, how to customize it for your imbalances or your constitution, prakriti. Then seasonal changes that we make. Fasting is huge, when it comes to the Vata Kapha type of the PCOS. Fasting is important. Exercise is important. Whereas in the lean type, the overwork type, slowing down and nourishing is more important. So I guess you understood that main difference. Then most important is the Ritumati Charya, our food and lifestyle modification during the menstrual period. So we often think that menstruation is just related to fertility, conceiving, but menstruation is a time for creation. It is not just creating a baby, but after after menstruation, but it's also creating anything that you want to manifest, right? So that is the reason why if you look at the do's and don'ts, it clearly says that pause and take the chill pill for those 2 days. Just relax and contemplate, meditate more. That helps in this next phase of creation. So I often say that we females have this additional GPS system of menstruation. If there is an abnormality with menstruation, we can we can understand that this is the imbalance going on in my body, and we can take steps. Instead of that, what we are doing right now is just silencing it, right? So if you are having a painful menses, take the painkillers. It's like your alarm is beeping, the burglar alarm is beeping, and you are sleeping. You think that, okay, this is disturbing my sleep, and you just open the door and let in whoever the intruder is because it's disturbing your sleep. That is the kind of treatment that we are doing these days.
Yeah.
So just pay attention to your body, use the menstrual cycle as a guiding system for your imbalances, or to understand how balanced you are. Maybe avoid hormonal disruptors that creeps into your food and your cosmetic products. That is also a huge mistake that we do. We don't realize that these shampoos or these foundations that we are using is bringing in more and more of these harmful chemicals into our system. Then, of course, yoga. The main big ones that I often tell for this condition, Surya Namaskara 15 to 20 times a day, Ardha Chakrasana, Bhujangasana, Dhanurasana, Pavanamuktasana. These are the main 5 ones that I often tell. And of course, that is also something, you have to see a yoga expert and customize it for you. Not all asanas is for everyone. So that also needs to be customized. The basic pranayama, maybe deep belly breathing for 15 minutes every day, that makes a huge difference. And the way our HPO axis works, say that is what the food and lifestyle modifications would be for PCOS.
Wow, fantastic, Vaidya Kamya. That was amazing. Such a great rundown. And, it really is about living our day in, day out life close to nature, right? Close to the circadian rhythms, in tune with them. And also having these rituals in our day that keep us in a foundation of sattva or kam and keep our doshas balanced, but also recognizing the shifts in our monthly cycle as women, that we're recognizing, and I love what you say, it's like we have an additional GPS system, which is amazing. But sometimes we're just plowing through our cycle, the start of our cycle. And it's so important during those days when we are so open to guidance, to intuition, to creativity, is take advantage of that. There's so few opportunities in our society today to slow down, that this is a great monthly reminder for women. When you start your cycle, the start of the bleed phase is that you slow down, you go inward and use this natural creativity that's alive at that time, and that natural, like you said, GPS access, our access to our intuition is wonderful. But it's acknowledging all these shifts and rituals in our day, in our menstrual cycle, in the seasonal cycle, seasonal cleansing, to make sure we're removing the accumulation of the doshas at the end of a season before we transition into a new one. All these are really important. And then if we live with these foundations in our life, day in, day out, they're such simple things, but also an amazing way to prevent imbalances in the doshas, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it in any other. You said it beautifully. So I didn't touch upon cleanse, and I guess that's maybe another time I can talk about how important and how beneficial a cleanse is, because I see clients after doing cleanse, and as part of the protocol, I might do a cleanse for them, the traditional cleanse. I'm not talking about just the khichdi cleanse. When they come back and say, I didn't know I could, that I could eat and still lose weight.
Yes.
So it resets your metabolism. It's wonderful. It's amazing.
Yeah, and especially with those with infertility issues, like preconception cleanses, it's just amazing what it can do for the body and for the system as a whole, and it can be really a great reset. So Vaidya Kamya, thank you so much. It was such a great in-depth conversation, covered a lot, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this because it is a concern. It's a common syndrome, and I think today we hit on all aspects of it, and also giving people confidence that this is something that can be rectified, and it's just a matter of looking at the root causes and also implementing some simple dinacharya, daily habits, diet, lifestyle, stress reducing factors, and you can have that vitality back and get all your systems back on track as well. So Vaidya Kamya, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and I appreciate all this wisdom you shared with us.
Thank you, Colette. It was absolutely wonderful. Ayurveda is not something that you have to look up when you have an imbalance or a glaring chronic condition, but rather I would say, make it a part of your life, your lifestyle, and make it in your family. Let it be a system in your family that everybody slowly adopts. And that is, Ayurveda Day is coming. This year the slogan is Har Din Har Ghar Ayurveda. That is in Hindi, which means let every household and our every day be filled with Ayurveda.
Beautiful. Which essentially means we need to reconnect with nature in so many ways. So it's a beautiful way to live, and it's beautiful to see Ayurveda blossom and people to understand it more and embrace it more. And this is exactly what we need to heal ourselves and heal our planet as well. So this is exactly what's needed. So thank you again for coming on and spreading this wisdom today. Vaidya Kamya, I hope you come back and visit us again here on the podcast.
Absolutely. I would be delighted.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for now, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Colette, and have a wonderful Halloween is coming. Yes. It's a time of, many celebrations are coming. So happy Halloween, happy Diwali.
Diwali is also coming up. Yes, so true. Wonderful. Well, enjoy the festivities, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Vaidya Kamya, and please check out the show notes for all the links mentioned in this episode. If you think that this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this wisdom of Ayurveda. If you haven't already followed or subscribed to the podcast, please do so, and the new episodes will automatically download for you. And if you would like to rate and review the podcast, I would really appreciate that. You can find me on social media under Elements Healing and Wellbeing on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.